Hi folks, Eric from Hit Subscribe, and today I'm doing yet another one of these videos in this video playlist where I answer client questions, prospect questions, friends of the business, anybody that writes in with questions, I am happy to answer those. Today's question is, and this is a timely one, so as of recording, I'm recording this on June 4th, 2024, and about a week ago, there was sort of a Watergate deep throaty thing that happened in the SEO world where I guess the equivalent of the deep throat is some anonymous person, and I forget, Richard Bernstein, the reporter was Rand Fishkin from SparkToro, and he dropped this article that I imagine has earned them an incredible amount of backlinks on SparkToro that was a leak of Google's internal ranking. So a client wrote in and asked the question to us, what do you think about this? And does it impact, or should we alter the way that we're approaching SEO in light of this leak? So that's an easy one for me to answer. My answer is no, I don't think I would change anything about what Hit Subscribe is doing, frankly. And if anything, I would double and triple down on our methodology, and I'll get into why I say that here in a moment. But if anything, what I told the client was I would expect that other SEO outfits might start to actually behave a little bit more like Hit Subscribe in the wake of this than vice versa. So let me walk through why it is I say that, and also generally our philosophy about the things that Google says and the things that SEO consultants say. So first of all, why do I say I wouldn't change anything about what we do? The answer to that is because basically one of the things that I saw summarized in this leak, and I don't actually pay all that much attention to what Google and SEO people say. We're really a lot more data driven. So we have been doing SEO and content for clients for 7 years and getting a lot of nice hockey stick traffic graphs for a long time. So we're kind of more focused on the results than trying to internalize and read the tea leaves of people's speculation about a proprietary algorithm. But in as much as we have speculated about that algorithm, what we have speculated is that whatever they may say, Google is going to behave a certain way when it comes to user data. Now, here's what I mean, and I'm actually going to show you here a blog post that I have that I wrote 2 years ago where I was addressing how we approach SEO, and this is obviously before this recent leak. And I said in this post, the search engines, as I've mentioned, are eternally trying to figure out how to determine whether a reader likes a piece of content. And given that most sites use Google Analytics, many people use Chrome, and that Google et al. Are capable of capturing a creepy amount of data about you, it shouldn't surprise you to learn that they can ascertain how long you spend on a page, whether you slam the back button immediately, how many pages on a site you click through, etc. And then in parentheses, I say, I think they might officially claim not to track this and that it doesn't affect rankings, but I mean, come on. And so this has been our assumption over the last few years, is to say, and to summarize this again, let's assume that there's a giant firm with a long, rich history of spying on you. I don't know, call it Google. And let's say that they dominate the search market to the point of monopoly. They have a near monopoly on analytics tracking on web pages, and they also have the most dominant browser on the market. This company with a history of spying has absolutely every aspect of Google searches, and the eponymous term for that, under control. It's not so unreasonable to think that they would be able to observe what users of all of those platforms are doing, gather data on it, and feed it back into a content engine. And it makes sense that they would do that because what they're really trying to do with their search results is create a good experience for the searcher, one that crucially is good enough that the searcher will put up with the advertising that they do in order to monetize the search experience. So Google wants searchers to be happy. Google wants you to look something up on their site, click on the top result, scroll through it, and feel satisfied so that you'll keep using Google search and they can keep showing you ads. So our methodology all along has been to kind of ignore what Google says about how their proprietary opaque algorithm works, because we would consider Google to be a fairly unreliable narrator. This isn't a perfect analogy, but I liken it to this. Imagine that you're playing a game of Texas Hold'em. You're playing a game of poker, and the person across from you has cards in their hand, and they want to beat you at this hand of poker, and they start telling you things about the cards they're holding. would you listen to them? I mean, you could. They might be telling you the truth. Like they might want to mess with you and tell you, yeah, I have this really good hand and you should lay down your cards because I have a good hand. And then you do, and then they show you that they were telling the truth, and that's some like three-dimensional chess to like mess with your head. Or they might be lying, But the point is, you don't know what they're doing, but they have no motivation to be helpful in what they're telling you. Now, this isn't a perfect metaphor because Google, in talking about how to conduct search, has some motivation to be helpful. Namely, I think they want to, discourage the most egregious SEO scumbags out there from scamming and whatever else they may do. So it isn't a perfect analogy, but it is illustrative of how we think about what Google is doing and what they're saying, which is you can't rely on this to be true. They are, after all, dropping hints in cagey fashion about a proprietary algorithm that would have some competitors if they just open it up. There's a reason they don't open source it. They want things about it to be secret. Ergo, you really can't trust them per se in terms of what they're telling you. So what we do instead is we consider Google to be sort of an unreliable narrator, and we consider the SEO people that follow collecting news items in their wake to be very unreliable narrators, and we just kind of tune it all out. And what we do instead is base our methodology on what we see is working and what doesn't. And we're constantly running experiments, executing refreshes, learning, grabbing feedback from what we do, from what we see other people do, and so on. Now, this isn't to say, clients write in with a lot of questions. It's not that if you were to say, hey, does it matter if you put keywords into H2s in your article or something, we wouldn't steadfastly refuse to have an opinion or consider what anyone said on the matter. We would look into it for you. But we'd probably come back and say, yeah, there's a lot of conflicting information out there. I wouldn't listen to too much of it. If you really want to know the answer, why don't we run some A/B tests on your site? So we tend to be very empirical, very data-driven, and to kind of treat everything we're doing as a scientific experiment, if you will, or at least, reasonable approximation thereof. And that makes sense. Google's internal algorithm, rather than trying to understand it through something approximating observation, you're better off making indirect observations. So here's a metaphor I might think of, and it's that no scientist, at least that I could imagine in the foreseeable future, is going to be able to go to Jupiter and go in through that gas planet's atmosphere and get down to the core of Jupiter and actually see for themselves what it looks like to be able to say, yes, it's made of, carbon or whatever they think is in there. What you have to do if you're a scientist instead is rely on indirect observation. So again, this isn't a perfect metaphor, but it's kind of designed to illustrate our philosophical approach here, which is to say, look, let's forget about trying to know the unknowable core of Google's algorithm, and let's instead observe what happens when you interact with it from the outside in. That's the best that we're going to do. There's no sense in speculating what the core of Jupiter looks like. We can accept that certain things are unknowable, measure and observe what we can, and run experiments on what we can, and feed that back into how we take action. So, yeah, that is my answer to the question of what, if anything, we would do differently based on this leaked information. The answer is really nothing. It seems to generally slightly corroborate what we've been doing all along. And I will, probably based on this, if nothing, also double down on the idea of I don't know how closely I would listen to anything that Google tells you, because as evidenced by this leak, they're not super motivated to be completely forthright about everything to do with their proprietary algorithm. And I also think it's, good, safe policy to tune out what most SEO consultants have to say about things, because, I don't mean any offense by this, but it is a line of work that has pretty low barrier to entry. Like kind of anybody can call themselves an SEO consultant and then, just read a feed of, industry best practices or whatever and kind of spit those back out. So I think you have to be careful in what sources you curate and listen to in that industry. If you're going to listen to SEO people, I think he left the industry, but Rand Fishkin that did the leak seems like a good one. There are people out there that I would listen to, the Ahrefs blog or Video Sam O. There are some people out there that share genuinely valuable information, but I think a lot of it and a lot of what Google says and all the tea leaf reading and speculation tends to just be really noisy. And I would suggest, and we tend to optimize in favor of running experiments and feeding measured data back into your decisions. And that's generally, I think, a good policy. So hopefully some of you out there find that helpful, and I will catch you next time.